finalizing the program of the terrace stage here today. We're going to have a really interesting talk about a legal tech. And before I give the microphone over to this amazing person here on stage, I'd like to remind you guys that you have the amazing opportunity to ask questions through the Slido.com app. So you just go to your smartphone, insert the Slido.com. The password is TechBBQ. Doesn't need to be caps or small letters. Just write TechBBQ. You get in there. You select the stage, terrace stage, and you can ask anything. We're going to go through the questions later, or you can also raise your hand. So whatever you prefer. Giving you guys a little bit of an introduction of who's joining us for this last session. We have Bebe Chueh, who is a co-founder and partner of Atrium. Atrium is the most client-centric law firm, providing legal services and applications to fast-growing companies. And with experience as a litigator and also having started her own company, Attorney Fee, Bebe really knows, all the understands what startup businesses needs in terms of legal services at all the different stages. And joining her on stage, we have Alexandra Andhov, who is an assistant professor of corporate law at the Center for Enterprise Liability here in the Copenhagen University. And her main areas and responsibility of research is the corporate law, capital market law, corporate social responsibility, and contract law. But it's not about me talking here. I'd like to go further and give the microphones over to you, Bebe. Alexandra.
Thank you very much.
Go ahead.
Welcome, everyone. Hello, yes. We were wondering with Bebe how many of you are legal startups? There are a couple,
wow,
right? How many of you are investors? As well, okay. All right. And we were discussing how to make really the next 25 minutes as valuable as we can for you. And we came to the conclusion that first Bebe will tell you about her experience with Atrium, how it all emanated, and what have been the challenges, what were the good parts or bad parts. We will try to hide from the rain as well. Yeah, maybe we'll turn there.
Okay, it's okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's
okay. It's still okay. And then we'll have a little bit of a discussion as to maybe what are the differences between the European versus the American legal market, and then we'll end with your questions. So, and anytime really, if you have any question, just raise your hand. I think we are very flexible to answering your questions as well. So please, Bebe. Do you want to go there?
Sure. Do you want to? Oh, you want to go inside? The wettest fireside chat I've been to. Oh yeah, no worries. Okay. Did you want to do the question or?
No.
Okay. Yeah. So my name is Bebe, and I am currently in Silicon Valley. The latest company is Atrium. However, this is my third legal company now, so I can tell you a lot about legal startups, but also startups in general, if those of you have questions. And we were talking about this earlier. What is legal tech? A good friend of mine joked that legal tech is technology, but much smaller market, right? And how to think about it is, how I think about it is, it's a very vague term, to be honest. And but what it is that in America, there are more than 1 million lawyers. And the market size for legal services is $400 billion there alone. And legal tech to me is how to make these services more efficient and better for our end users. So, and there are a lot of components to getting that done. Yeah.
So tell us about the Atrium. So what is it? What do you do? How it's different? And how is it trying to target the startups? But how it is also by itself a startup?
Yeah, so it's a very meta. I feel like I'm in the Matrix, if those of you have seen the movie, all the time when I'm in Atrium, because we're advising startups, we are ourselves a startup, and we're raising money, and we're helping people raise money, you know, and all of that. To think about legal services, it's divided into individuals, so consumers, individuals, things like divorce, wills, you know, and then there are corporate legal services. Atrium belongs in the corporate legal services sector, and which is anything servicing companies, right? And that there's a lot to do there. There's contracts, there's real estate, there is closing deals, and we chose as our strategy to focus on venture capital deal making as our first practice area. And the reason why is because we want to grow with the startups that we serve so that as they grow, their legal needs will become more complicated, and we can help add practice areas as they grow as well. So we grow alongside our clients.
Okay, and what are, for instance, a couple of the legal tech firms doing in Silicon Valley? What is that they are focusing? What kind of services are they trying to take away from the ordinary poor lawyers?
So so again, in Silicon Valley, we were talking about there's like divorce law, right? So 50% of people get divorced, and it's very messy paperwork. So there's a company called WeVorce who's disrupting the process of divorce, trying to make it easier. I don't know if people know Wilson. There's like a robot that is trying to also predict divorce outcomes and whatnot. So there's stuff like that there. There's patent law, because patent is like a big field in the US as well, and it's a very long process. So there's a lot of companies doing that. And then we specialize in venture capital law, which is like, again, closing deals. It typically takes 2 months to close a deal for startups to get funding. And we developed a lot of workflows to, get that process down to only 2 days, right? So in our process, the startups get funded more quickly, and it costs them less money to do so.
Okay, and how do you feel? Are the lawyers more receptive and open to new tech solutions, or they continue to be kind of rigid as they usually are, and they are not really much open to anything else than just Word and Excel?
Yeah, so lawyers are the most risk-averse individuals. We always say, the reason why we go to law school, I'm a lawyer myself, is because we don't want to talk to people or do sales or something like that, right? And so you're like, I'm really good at studying. So very risk-averse group of people. And much like fintech, actually, at the end of the day, the technology is there to make a lot of efficiencies happen. But it's really the regulators, right, that in this case, the lawyers themselves, who have to embrace technology and allow that to happen to the industry. And we are very hopeful that in the US, at least right now, lawyers are becoming more progressive and liberal. The leader in this area is actually the UK, because the UK has already allowed alternative business structure to happen, which is when a law firm can be owned by a non-lawyer entity. So everywhere else, at least with common law, a law firm has to be owned by lawyers, so partners. And in the UK, this is changing. And as a result, because US follows UK a lot, the law here is becoming a lot more liberal, and we're hoping to see that happen as well.
Okay, so where do you see this kind of hopefully going on this kind of wave? How will the tech really affect the life of ordinary lawyers? in, let's say, 5 or 10 years? Are we only talking about the large corporate law firms that are dealing with corporate clients and making their services effective? Or is it really something that actually we can develop to such an extent that can help every lawyer that is out there?
Yeah, currently we already recruited over 150 lawyers to come to Atrium. So I think the trend is continuing. The biggest difference is before, the norm in America is billable hours. So lawyers charge for every hour that they work. And one of the biggest things we changed is everything is a flat fee, because there has to be a flat fee in order for technology to happen, and so to come in and become more efficient. And I would like to tell a story, which is really, I feel very great about it. So a colleague of mine who works at Atrium, before she worked at this firm called Wilson Sonsini, which is like a big firm, also specializing in this area. And she had chronic back pain. So she had to get a surgery every quarter because she worked so hard, all the hours to bill. And and after working at Atrium for a year, she actually, doesn't have back pain anymore, because she just gets paid for every deal that she handles, and it could be on her own time and whatnot. So I think we're improving the lives of attorneys ultimately by making everyone's lives focus more on delivering the value rather than just spending time to work.
Okay, and now a little bit critical question. Don't you think that maybe this tech compartment kind of gets the lawyers away from their clients? That simply because everything now will be done through the computers and the clients will put in their details and questions and everything, and it will be processed through whatever there is, blockchain and whatnot. Or artificial intelligence, ultimately, that the human kind of character of the client versus lawyer's relationship will somehow evaporate.
Yeah, I think the most human part of that relationship is advice, and real advice from lawyers, strategy, problem solving, fact pattern recognition. It's like, hey, I've solved this problem for someone else before. Here's how it came out in this other experience. And that technology can never replace. What technology does replace is copy pasting, signature blocks, and printing paper and things like that. So I think that as a result, lawyers can focus on more the most human part of being a lawyer, actually.
And then we also, because obviously we spoke a little bit before the session as to how to handle it and what are the questions. And what I see is that a lot of the technology, what they are trying to do is to simply cross the borders, and number of the solutions are simply generally applicable, irrespective of the fact whether it would be in Denmark or in the UK or in the US, whether it is art tech or health tech or whatever. But do you think that this is possible for the legal tech? Do you think that through the technology and the globalization we will bring together, or we will pass these jurisdictional issues, and let's say a company here in Denmark that focuses on easier assessment of contracts will be simply able to provide their services also outside Denmark?
Yeah, the issue of regulation and what's possible is always very interesting. At least in the U.S., there has been a shift. So before, when there's regulation, it's always a wall, and it's hard for companies to cross that wall. And now, because of how scalable everything is, that power dynamic has been inverted. So there's a lot of like, let's do something, prove value, and then we'll worry about regulation later, right? And so in the case of Uber, I know it's no longer in Copenhagen, but it's very much illegal or very gray area of legality for that company. And but the fact of the matter is they did it anyway, and whichever place ended up using it, lobby to change the regulation for that. similarly, at Atrium, we're the first venture-funded law firm. Again, this is like a very new gray area. We did this interesting corporate structure where we receive a lot of funding for the law firm in a way that law firm has never been funded before. So just before I left, we closed our Series B, and it was $65 million immediately into a law firm, and it allows us to just hire a bunch of lawyers, and it's very gray area where we don't know what's going to happen, honestly. But I think that if we do prove value, then the legislation might just change. So that's something that I see happening a lot. So.
And here in Denmark, what I've been observing is that we have a number of interesting small startups who are somehow, in one way or another, supported by the larger law firms, but it's not the trend that the law firms themselves that are established and have enough capital that would go on and try to be the leaders in the market. And by what you are saying, it's fairly similar because it allowed you to establish Atrium and simply take over 165 million on the market. So why do you think it is that the large law firms simply do not, those who would have the easiest access to capital, do not realize that this is the future and maybe that this is also part of the business that they should invest in?
Yeah, it's honestly how law firms are structured. It's a partnership always, right? And so each law firm has anywhere from 100 to thousands of partners. And when you have partnership, the decision making is just very slow because you have to have meetings and convince everybody to agree on something in order for a decision to be held, and that takes a very long time, right? And so at Atrium, we got rid of that model, and we just said that this is almost like a corporation, and it makes decision making a lot faster, and it allows us to move faster. So that's why I think it happened.
Okay. And do you see Atrium growing outside of the U.S.?
Yeah, right now we're in the U.S., but already we have handled a lot of what we call flips, which are companies originating in other countries like Copenhagen. In this case, we have India, we have many other fabulous startups from all over the world trying to come into Silicon Valley. And whenever that happens, they need to reincorporate, and we do that for a lot of startups already, and that is our first foray into internationalization.
And where would you then, because I asked you, so where do you see the LegalTech in 5-10 years? So where do you see Atrium in 5-10 years?
Yeah, so we want to spread to the obviously US, right? We're still very small in the grand scheme of things. So Silicon Valley, New York, LA, the big cities, and then common law countries would be next because that is the easiest for us to go into English-speaking countries, and then hopefully, places outside of that. Yeah.
I think we kind of exhausted. So when
we have now a great opportunity, to ask questions. So there was a lot of legal tech startups here also in the house. So a great opportunity if you ask any sort of questions. So just put your hands up enthusiastically in the air, and you'll get the microphone. Yes.
Maybe, don't you see that this area, legal tech, could develop the same way as fintech, that it's going to be an area where you have a lot of companies saying that we're going to disrupt everything, but by the end of the day, they're just getting acquired by the incumbents? Don't you think this is going to happen here as well? I mean, obviously not with Atrium, but what is the exit for Atrium? Is that to become a big profitable company or to be acquired by,
Yeah, right now we're what we call in America swinging for the fences, which is a baseball analogy. But we are already valued at $210 million, which means that no one in our industry can acquire us. So our only exit is an IPO. So we have to try really hard. And another company, my first company was purchased by this company called LegalZoom, and it's right now at $2 billion in valuation, and it will be going public next year. So these are two. So these are like the two biggest sort of legal tech companies that we're hoping can pave the way for the industry to, and then we want to acquire the startups that are innovating. So it is a very new industry, as you said. For fintech, there are a lot more established institutions already that have exited, obviously, that can acquire all the startups, and it might not be a bad thing for the startups. Any exit is a good exit.
Any other questions? Just hand in the air.
Yeah, it can be about startups too, not just
Yeah.
law or anything, like.
Exactly. Yes. Get the microphone.
Hi, I actually don't have a formulated question in my mind.
No worries.
But I work in audit for a large financial institution here in Denmark. And I'm just thinking that, how, because I'm thinking about innovation in that area. How do we create some kind of regulatory technology implementation for auditing financial regulations? I don't know if you can say something about that, maybe.
Yeah, I think you probably have more things to say about that, being in the.
I think
fintech.
what we are discussing here, and this is the challenge, but also the opportunity. Again, there are a number of quotes on this. When you have a highly regulated market, then as law or as auditing or the obligations of the firms to publish their annual reports, it's also a challenge to actually come up with something that makes it easier. But there are a number of companies that try to kind of automatize this kind of procedures. Again, the question will be as to the exit. Will they be really self-growing companies, or will they be ultimately acquired by the Big Four? And will that ease up the processes of the auditors? But there are solutions, I think, already that are kind of automatizing the work and trying to make it easier. That's what I can observe. Excuse me? Data analytics.
Data
yes.
analytics, definitely.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for the question. There was another one. Yes.
Hi, my name is Jarek. I'm one of the founders at ContractBook, one of the local legal tech companies.
Cool.
You said something about being client-centric. Can you describe that a little bit more? What does it mean to be client-centric?
Yeah, that's very good. So client-centric to me means not, first and foremost, getting rid of the billable hour is a must, I feel, in becoming client-centric, because there's a perverse incentive to take longer than you need to when you're charging by the minute. And US lawyers charge every 6 minutes. So I used to look at the clock, like 0.1, oh, I just made another $100, right? And that's not very client-centric. It's very me-centric. So that is a must. And then also being available and responsive as a lawyer, because your service is to advise. And if you can't be reached, because you're not paying attention to your phone or whatever, then that's also not very good. So. And then, of course, confidentiality, and so we take a lot of measures to make sure that information that is privy to us does not leak out, especially when it comes to mergers and acquisitions and very sensitive transactions at the firm. Yeah.
But I would also just, before that, say that one part, and that's the challenge for the educators or the universities, is that definitely technology will make the life easier, and already we see the access to documents and access to analyze them in quicker and faster way. But that what will make, I think, ultimately lawyers want to differ from one another will be the kind of a soft skills, a side of being knowledgeable, that you can communicate to a client, that you can listen to a client, that you can present and also maybe also see the business angle. I don't know how many of you are lawyers, but my experience, and I also used to be a corporate lawyer, was that lots of lawyers didn't have the business angle, so they, looked into the law and gave the same answer over and over. And I'm sure as new or newly founded startups, you see that the one advice does not fit all, and this is what will make the difference.
Yeah.
But do you believe that all the lawyers are ready to also realize the fact that they have to be customer centric?
No, they're not ready, and frankly, but I think there are now pressures to make them ready. So it's not entirely voluntary at the moment. The biggest competitor to corporate law firms is actually corporations themselves. So in the US, the corporations are extremely fed up with the outside law firms, and so they start to develop internal corporate law departments. And it's growing. Google has 2,000 lawyers that work inside of Google. And that's actually one of the biggest law firms, is its own legal department, and that's because they can hire lawyers for $50,000 or $70,000 to provide unlimited advice and whatnot, rather than, dealing with the formalities of trying to have a fancy lawyer outside of the firm. So pressures like that, definitely will cause the lawyers to have no choice but to become more client-centric. Yes.
Maybe if I can pressure a little bit to go deeper into that question.
Sure.
I mean, the question about customer centricity, I mean, it's stating the obvious. I mean, all successful, maybe not any law firms, but all individual lawyers are successful because they are customer centric.
Yes.
So that's not new.
Yes.
What you said that it would be interesting to get more
Sure.
specific on would be, so all these principles, flexibility, business advice, strategic advice, responsiveness, and all these things. How are you going to add that into a business model that is based on charging not on billable hours, but a fee? How are you going to automate that? How are you going to put it into Atrium? Because, I mean, it's stating the obvious that you should be customer centricity. That's Bezos has said that, and John Ford said that. Everybody's been saying that for 1,000 years.
Again, we are a firm of flat fees, and that is the foundation of productizing legal services. And once that incentive structure is placed, then everyone focuses on, becoming better and more efficient. How do we do that? Aside from changing the business model. Oh, I see what you mean. So we have also ratings, right? So after every transaction, the lawyers get rated by, are you satisfied? So customer satisfaction surveys, which is called NPS, is extremely important. And that's what we create bonus structures based on that. After every quarter, we're like, oh, if your score is higher than 4.3, then you get a lot more bonus. And so it's in the compensation plan to incentivize lawyers to be extremely, and also retention is very important. So for us, if a lawyer keeps losing clients, we keep score of that, and then we say well, if you can't retain our clients, then we can retain you, and that is effective. So. Oh, I dropped my napkin. Okay, any other questions?
We still have room for one question, a quick one, if there's anybody who really feels the need that they still want to take the opportunity. If not, I'd like to, let's give them a big round of applause for this last chat. It's really, really good. Thank you. It's pretty comfortable down there, especially when it's not raining. And according to the forecast, it's going to be sun tomorrow, so we'll be back here, probably getting a tan or something tomorrow. But thank you. Thank you so much.